The following half-hour show is a paid political program and is not endorsed by this station, management, or staff.
The following program is sponsored by Excalibur Insurance Management Services.
We welcome to this week's show District Attorneys Mark Powell of Lackawanna County and Stefanie Salavantis of Luzerne County. The subject matter of today's show is the collateral damage caused by COVID-19. We have heard a lot in the media about the death toll and the sickness. We have also heard a lot about the attempted remedies, such as CDC guidelines, economic shutdowns and quarantines, as well as contact tracing and vaccines. What we do not hear enough about is the effect the foregoing measures have had on society and the deaths it has proximately caused by other means. The collateral damage of the so-called remedies has already killed and will continue to kill many more people by other means than the virus. Today's show will deal with the impact relative to law enforcement.
This is the Volpe Report, a weekly news and political interview show examining the latest local, state, and national issues with Chuck Volpe. Insightful, informative, controversial. The area's premier political talk show, the Volpe Report.
Welcome to the Volpe Report, Mark and Stefanie. As of course our audience already knows that I'm sitting here with our two, in terms of most populous regions of northeastern Pennsylvania, Mark from Lackawanna County and of course Stefanie from Luzerne County. One's a Democrat, one's a Republican. So we have, beside gender, have a good mix here. And Mark, you are finishing, I'll start with you first, finishing your first term as District Attorney of Lackawanna County. You ran in a very hard race, contested race against a former first assistant district attorney, Eugene Tallarico, won a good contest, ran a good campaign. You have spent 4 years since I'm a resident of Lackawanna County, I qualified to say, from my view, at least in my opinion, I think you've done an outstanding job representing the people. You have brought professionalism and your credentials as a trial attorney, as I've talked about, I think, during your campaign, are exceptional. Having been a trial lawyer a long time ago and loved being in a courtroom myself, to be certified as a trial attorney and the other distinctions you have gotten speak well for your ability in a courtroom, obviously. So, and I know one of the things you made an emphasis on 4 years ago was because of your credentials and ability, because you're clearly qualified to go to law school and teach trial tactics at the highest levels. You wanted to professionalize your office and help train your attorney. So talk a little bit about the 4 years. Was it what you expected and some of what you did?
Great. Well, first, thank you, and thanks for having me on the show. So I had 27 years of business experience walking into the job, and I think that was a solid foundation in order to make some improvements to make the office run more efficiently, and we've been very successful in that regard. And it was important for me to lead from the front and try cases in order to teach some of the assistant district attorneys how to try better cases, and I've made a commitment to do that. Fortunately, we've had some successful cases, and everybody is working more efficiently, more professionally, and really analyzing cases a lot better. I actually sit down with any case going to trial, even if I'm not involved in it, to try to provide that type of feedback in order to make them better lawyers. So honestly, I love the job. Don't plan on going anywhere. Seeking my second term, hopefully the voters in Lackawanna County will have the confidence and assurance that I'm doing the job well and will reelect me. But I truly do love the job. You get to really make a difference in people's lives, and you're on the right side of justice, and that's very rewarding.
Right. Well, like Stefanie, who I'm about to turn to, you, at least at this point, well into the petition circulation process. Nobody's emerged to circulate petitions, so we'll knock on wood. The highest honor you can be bestowed, of course, as an elected official is to run without opposition. So congratulations so far on that. Stefanie, District Attorney of Luzerne County. Multiple, I think this is third term you're involved. You were on the show when it was your first term and you started running. You were on the show in your second term. You've done an extraordinary job in the office. You're your advocates and the people that you supervise in the courtroom have done a great job. You've streamlined the office as well. You've made it more professional. And your oversight and your involvement in every single case is amazing that you have the time to do that in a county the size of Luzerne. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But there's a couple of announcements we should make. First of all, only 2 weeks ago, approximately, you gave birth to a young daughter, Remington.
Yes.
Great name. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And secondly, you are about to, or I know you've already announced that you are leaving the district attorney's office by your own hand and decision, since no one will run against you, to pursue becoming a judge of the Court of Common Pleas of Luzerne County. So obviously, I wish you well in that endeavor. As we talked about off camera, judges will not only put on that black robe and get called Your Honor, they also get the ability to determine schedules where prosecutors don't quite have the luxury. So that should afford you a little more time, at least, for child rearing. But having said that, why did you make that momentous decision to leave after 3 terms and decide to become a judge?
Well, first of all, like you said, being elected for 3 consecutive terms has been a great honor. I've been blessed that the people of Luzerne County have looked at me and looked at the job performance that I have done and really believed in what we're doing in the office. And because of that, and looking at the work that I have done over the 9+ years in the office, I really contemplated running for judge because I want to continue providing my services to the public. I want to find ways where I can help the public in any way I can. And my career has been about public service. And so I made the decision to run because I want to be part of improving and making the courts the best it can be, like we did for the district attorney's office in Luzerne County. I feel like our office is one of the best with Lackawanna County offices in Northeast PA where we can rely on each other, and we've grown together and built relationships. And I want to see that happen. I want to continue doing that, and I would love to do that on the bench.
Well, that's great. Well, having talked about some things and hopefully catching our viewers up with where both of you are in your careers and the job you're doing for them, we have come off, in my lifetime, I think, the most difficult, sustained difficulty that we faced as a country, as a nation, of course, in Pennsylvania and in northeastern Pennsylvania specifically, where we're all from. COVID-19 hit just about a year ago, believe it or not. And it's in its wake has left devastation and death and difficulty. One of the things I want to talk to you two about is, kind of a portion of what I'll call, like we have a Western Hemisphere and we have an Eastern Hemisphere. We've spent a lot of our time in this show, and I think people spend a lot of time in the Western Hemisphere in the sense that they talk, and rightly so, not in any way belittling it, but talking about the direct impact of COVID-19 and keeping people safe. We talk about what's now reported to be 440,000 American deaths and all that, and properly so talk about that. An issue for me, though, was and has been all along, is that this was a twofold moral situation. And I'm not saying it was an easy balance to maintain. We live kind of in a zero-sum world, and as one side goes up, the other side necessarily has to go down. So the bottom line is that I have been talking for a year on this show and bringing in experts to talk about the other side, the Eastern Hemisphere of the moral dilemma, which is deaths caused indirectly, collaterally, and by other means than COVID-19, but directly the result of COVID-19. Because when you shut down the economy, when you effectively in that shutdown lose millions and nationwide tens of millions of jobs, and you lose thousands and tens of thousands of small business, which is the engine, the economic driver in our economy. And people have lost businesses that have been in their families for 5 generations. Our school children are home from schools, and there's psychological and social damage to that result. So when you put it all together, I have kind of been talking about, and I don't think enough talk has been about. Well, what about the lives we're losing by other means? What about the depression? What about the suicide? What about violent crime? Drug overdoses up at record numbers. Suicides are up at record numbers. So having put that in some context, there becomes another more even indirect collateral damage to those things, and that's crime goes up. Violent crime is up. Aggravated assaults are up. So, and when that happens, that's you guys, the two chief law enforcement officers effectively in northeastern Pennsylvania. I'm going to start with you, Stefanie, on that specific issue before I turn to Mark, because it's hard for me even to repeat, and naturally we're not going to show any video on the show of what happened in Plains, a week or two ago, right, when over an incident of neighbors shoveling snow. And apparently one neighbor's snow was getting shoveled in a way that ended up on the other neighbor's property. To wit, that neighbor comes out with a handgun and proceeds to shoot the two people that were shoveling the snow. And, at least the one shoveling the snow and the wife that came out to assist him, goes in and gets an AR-15 rifle and then comes out and executes the both of them, who were already grievously wounded from the handgun. And then, of course, when police arrive, turns the gun on himself and commits suicide. 3 completely useless deaths over shoveling snow, and somewhere, without any scientific or empirical evidence, I understand this is only an opinion, I think part of that is the social depression in what we've been talking about relative to the pandemic. Nerves are frayed. People have been shut in. There's already been violence because of that all over the country. And that's one where, the balloon just popped. So talk about that.
And I agree with you and everything that you have stated so far. When you have these social pressures, you have these economic, financial pressures that everybody's been put through since the beginning of COVID. You're seeing people losing jobs left and right, losing businesses. This starts mounting and it starts building up anger, depression, and that's when Mark and I start seeing the crime rates increasing. Domestic violence, it has increased substantially. And unfortunately, we haven't talked about child abuse. In Luzerne County alone, our child abuse numbers are typically about, say, 500 to 550 reported annually. We're down 40%. That doesn't mean that child abuse isn't occurring. It's just not being reported. There is so much that's going on because of what happened with COVID that we are seeing it on different ends of it, from the criminal justice system to the family courts and everything beyond. I think that we need to start paying attention to that. We need to start paying attention to the suicide numbers and start trying to find ways in which all parties, if it's the criminal justice system, the drug and alcohol system, the mental health system, all of us come together and say, how can we help these individuals so it doesn't keep going up? Because we don't know when the end is going to come, when people are going to be able to go back to work, socialize normally, that we talked about earlier. We are human beings. We love to be social. If we don't have that, what does that mean to us? Does that affect us personally? And I do believe it does. So we need to start looking at that and analyzing it and seeing how we can make a change and bring that change.
Very well said. And Mark, pretty much the same question. Your take on it.
Sure. I mean, the best example is the overdose deaths. We made great strides in 2019 to significantly reduce overdose deaths, and then in 2020 they spiked. In Lackawanna County, they're not quite as high as they were historically, but it's directly related to COVID. You have added stress and anxiety, people dealing with anxiety and depression, and they're more likely to use drugs under those scenarios. And then the ones who are in recovery, who have a support system in place, no longer have the face-to-face support system in place. And so we worked very hard to try to maintain that support system. So you can go to an AA meeting online. And now that things are expanding a little bit, we have rooms available where people can safely get together and rely on other people, but wear masks, be socially distanced. But it certainly isn't the same support that they relied on so heavily before. And that's just one small example. And it's hard to put a lot of weight into the statistics, because in the spring of last year, as Stefanie said, our domestic calls were down. And we know that people were under more pressure living at home and more abuse was occurring, but they couldn't reach out and call because the abuser was in the same house with them. So it has had a significant impact on law enforcement. But law enforcement is resilient. We continue to do our job, and we have two fronts. One, we have to investigate and make arrests, and sometimes that means police putting their own safety at risk, entering into houses, dealing with individuals who are not living the safest lifestyle. And then we have to get those through the court system, which has other challenges because our court system has been shut down. So it's a challenge, and it's a challenge that we continue to work through, but it is progressing, and it's really attributable to the great men and women in law enforcement who continue to do their job despite the personal risks.
We'll be back right after these messages.
Every week, Chuck Volpe shares his perspective on Pennsylvania issues in the news and on your mind. From new laws being introduced in Harrisburg and Washington to government spending and even local controversies, hear how they affect us in Northeast and Central Pennsylvania. Catch Volpe's Views every Tuesday on the Fox 56 News, first at 10.
Welcome back. Again, we're here with District Attorneys Mark Powell from Lackawanna County and Stefanie Salavantis from Luzerne County. And as promised, I have some statistics. This study was prepared by and for the National Commission on COVID-19 and Criminal Justice. It was prepared by Arnold Ventures. It is titled Pandemic, Social Unrest, and Crimes in United States Cities. It's prepared for the Commission on COVID-19. This is the 2020 year-end update. And a couple of high points. First of all, the study was performed across 34 American cities, the largest being New York City, with approximately 8.4 million residents. And the smallest city interviewed, where the study was done, was Norfolk, Virginia, with just under 250,000 million residents, 245,000. The numbers are staggering. Homicides rose sharply in 2020, and rates of aggravated assaults and gun assaults increased as well. Homicide rates were up 30% higher in 2020 than they were in 2019. Now, as you guys know better than me, when homicide rates go up and violent crime goes up, you know, it's usually a marginal number from year to year. Sometimes you go through a bunch of years where they go down, 1%, 2%. 7 or 6% is a high number if it gets to that point in one year, or go up the same way, 1%, 4%, 6%, because I've obviously studied these things through the years as you have. 30% is like takes your breath away. Right. So in northeastern Pennsylvania, which was not included in this study, what have you seen this past year in our area? I'll start with you, Mark.
Yeah, fortunately, our numbers in Lackawanna County are a little better than that, but we are aware of the increased crime. Certainly, gun violence is up. The amount of guns on the street are up, and we've taken a very hard approach with respect to illegal gun transfers. We've had a couple successful arrests where individuals use straw parties and get guns purchased legally, but into the hands of gang members. Wow. And that's a frightening proposition because there are a lot of guns on the street in the wrong hands. Right. So we are aware of the problems and we're dealing with the challenges, but crime persists, unfortunately. People's safety is of paramount concern, and we're doing our best to actively investigate, prosecute successfully, and ultimately try to assure people that law enforcement is on their side. So we do encourage people to report, and we've seen a slight decline in certain cases in that regard because law enforcement is working. They've worked through the pandemic. They've worked through personal sacrifices and risk through the pandemic. We're there to investigate and prosecute these crimes.
Right. Stefanie, pretty much the same question, your view of it in Luzerne County. And as I said, from his answer to go over to add to your question, we talked about the homicides being up 30% in this study, and gun violence being up, historic numbers as well. We just made reference to in passing less than 2 weeks ago. Right. There was a handgun involved as well as an AR-15 rifle involved in the murder-suicide of 3 people over shoveling snow in Luzerne County and Plains. So again, same question to you.
Well, and it's very similar to how Mark responded. We, in the beginning of 2020, we weren't really seeing a major change. And I do believe, just as Mark stated, it's the good work of law enforcement trying to remain vigilant and continue working hard to keep the drugs, the gangs, the violence off our streets. But we were seeing an increase in gun crimes. So in Luzerne County, we really put an emphasis on our gun violence reduction task force and combined that with our drug task force to really put a lot of boots on the streets in the communities where we were seeing this increase, and trying to really emphasize, as Mark stated also, the community involvement, law enforcement's community involvement. We were getting a lot of tips coming in through the drug task force and the gun violence task force, assisting us with what they were seeing because people are home. They're paying attention to what's going on. So we were getting a lot of information that assisted law enforcement. But as the year went on, we were seeing an increase. We were seeing an increase in ag assaults, robberies, burglaries, things of that nature, and into 2021, as you stated, with 3 unnecessary deaths occurring. And that was just one incident. We've had multiple this year. So I think that the pressures are starting to become higher. And we are seeing a lot of these different organizations, gangs, drugs, drug dealers coming out and causing violence in our streets.
We had in Pennsylvania alone, I think, a staggering number of something like 75 to 100,000 unemployed workers had not received their check. 50,000 to this date still haven't because of blown and I guess inferior computer systems. The portals they went to, they couldn't get on. They were sent off in the wrong direction. And not to be the bearer of bad news for our viewers, that same, in a way, system is now producing the same bad results with people trying to get the vaccine.
Right.
They're getting a voicemail and a number to call back, and we'll get back to it. And of course, no one calls back. So again, and unemployment, that's a direct result of what happens when why would 3 people that are neighbors just kill each other in the streets? Mm-hmm. You know, your thoughts first, more, because you guys see it firsthand.
Yeah, so I think it's a matter of getting the right professionals working together. And we were very successful doing that with an opioid coalition, and we made great strides. Recently, Lackawanna County created a suicide alliance. And there's a law enforcement component to it, but we also have experts from all fields who participate to try to come up with solutions. This is just in its infancy, but we received some grant money, so it's going to grow. We have to meet online. We haven't had a face-to-face meeting, unfortunately, but you have to embrace this technology and deal with what you're dealing with, because you can't wait until COVID clears to address these problems. But there are really good ideas generated from that. And so we're documenting statistics and we're looking for ways to improve. And I think that's all we can do is try to ease some of this anxiety, get the stigma with mental health reduced, and let people know there are resources out there. Even if they're online with COVID, there are resources out there to help.
Right. Stephanie, again, same question. I mean, you know, while technically it might not fit directly under your job description, but nonetheless, the underlying causes that lead to violence are something that law enforcement has to be aware of and involved in. So same thing. What are you guys doing? Well,
and you're absolutely right in that a lot of this stuff doesn't necessarily fall under what, if you had a job description for the district attorney and what our office entails, it doesn't fall under that. But we as district attorneys have changed so much over the years in getting involved. And as Mark's saying, all of these different ideas that we are developing in our counties, like the opioid coalition that he has, ours is called the Stop Coalition, to stop overdoses and stop the use of the substance abuse. And the Suicide Alliance that Mark's talking about, and our county working together, partnering with all of these different organizations and saying, we're here, is from law enforcement's perspective, we're here to help too. And I think that's been lost over the years, that people don't realize how much law enforcement and the district attorney's office has done in working closely and pushing these important issues. And it has come out because of COVID. as Mark stressed. Because of COVID, we have been able to say we're working together as a team, and this is what we've done for so long. And we need to continue doing that and coming up with these new ideas and how we can prevent these deaths. We talk about the suicides occurring and the staggering numbers. I don't know if you said it, the 1 in 4 individuals that are committing suicide.
Contemplating it.
Or contemplating suicide. That to me is just overwhelming. I cannot believe those numbers. And if we as a team need to start working together to make sure that does not continue to go on and that we find ways to prevent these deaths from occurring or the contemplation of it.
Right. Well, you made reference to something, and specifically, this is a story that appeared in the Washington Post, a William Wan story. And it was talking about to a parent and interviewing a parent whose child had committed suicide. And the questions that the story raises is that the father had said, what if we hadn't canceled our family vacation? What if their school hadn't been shut down? What if his son Christian could have leaned on best friends through this rough patch that he would see in school and in social gatherings that was shut down? And then you get to the conclusion that according to federal surveys, 40% of Americans, 40%, are now grappling with at least one mental health or drug-related problem since the pandemic. And then it goes on to say, even more alarming, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, recently asked young adults if they had thought about killing themselves in the past 30 days, the responses were 1 in 4 said yes. So again, what does that have to do, since this is not sociology class with district attorneys and with law enforcement, as we already stated, what it has to do with is that ends up on your desks. Right. The numbers you are dealing with in domestic violence that are at historic highs, homicides, assaults with guns are at historic highs. All those things are on your desk, but the underlying problems, COVID-19, which leads to the other things, you have to deal with. Right. So, well, I want to thank both of you as we wind down, and just in a short time, if you would, Mark, any closing thoughts on what you see in 2021 going forward?
We have to continue our efforts, get these resources to people who may be restricted in receiving them, and that's only going to be through technology. And continue to study. And we've learned a lot. When you relate this to the children in high school, 1 in 4 contemplating suicide, when we study our opioid deaths, which is a different path, we discovered that most of these problems occur in adolescence. Drug experimentation, mental health problems not addressed. So we are digging deeper and trying to find better ways, but it does end up usually addressing these things when children are younger.
Right.
And I think that we need to emphasize too that law enforcement, we're here to help. And when people have issues, when they are contemplating suicide, if they call and ask for help, we will always be there. And I think people forget that. With everything that has gone on nationally over the past year and a half, there has been a lot of hate thrown towards law enforcement, love thrown towards law enforcement. I think we all need to come together and realize that we, again, as I emphasized throughout this whole show, that we're a team and we need to do this together. We need to work together in order to make a positive difference. And if we do that, if we continue to work together, we will see a positive change. So that's why I always emphasize to people, please rely on your law enforcement, talk to them. If you need help, they're always going to be there.
Right. Well, great answers both. And thank you both for being here on the show. I wish you both Godspeed, you in your reelection and you in your new career venture, and which involves an election. So good luck in that. Your record speaks for itself. Again, we're here today with District Attorneys Mark Powell and Stefanie Salavantis. Both are seeking re-election this year, so be aware of that. That you, I'm sure, will be hearing from them. But more importantly, you heard from them in substance of the issues we confront going forward. And too much. I hate to say too much, but I have to use the word about only one look at COVID-19 and not the collateral damage that it's causing. We're not hearing enough about that. and we should. But you'll hear it from me, as you always do. So at any rate, we look forward to seeing you next Sunday at 11:30. Thanks for tuning in.